What's going on, all you cool cats and sly foxes out there in the programming world? You're in the midst of the midnight storm on the 411 with DJ Nicky Nick in the Seku Lab. On tonight's menu, we've got some JavaScript variables. Later on, we're going to follow it up with some arrays and loops. And later on down the line, we're going to wash it all down with some numeric data types. Yeah. Stay tuned. Man, I really need to get a life. Anyways, I'm Nick with Seku Technologies. I'd like to welcome everybody to your 5th JavaScript and jQuery tutorial. As I mentioned, we're going to be talking about variables today. I know we talked about variables in our last class, but I want to go a little bit further in depth, okay? We're going to be working on a pretty cool project. Now we're starting to get more in tune with our code, so I hope everybody downloaded the class number 5 project files. They can be found on my website. If you haven't, go on ahead and pause the video and get those downloaded. But as I mentioned, I just want to show you all the power that variables have. If you can remember, a variable is nothing more than a placeholder for an individual piece of data or pieces of data that we have within our programming code. It is nothing more than arithmetic. It is nothing more than algebra. X is equal to 5, Y is equal to MX plus B, my name is equal to Nick. That variable is always going to be attached to that specific piece of data unless we have another piece of code come in and update it for us. And I'll also show you how to do that. You also might notice that we don't have a lot of files, PowerPoint files, within this particular class. That's because I want you all to grasp onto this concept based off of the project that we do. So without further ado, let's go on ahead and get started. So I'm going to pop open brackets, and as you can see, I already have my files ripping and ready to go. If you don't, please go on ahead and get those open and have your screen in a split screen mode. How you get to split screen is by clicking on this particular pane, clicking on vertical split, and if your screen is still empty, then you should be able to come over to your file explorer and select the individual files that you want to see. In this case, we're taking a look at class 5 HTML and also the class 5 variables, numbers, and Boolean JavaScript files. Now, what we are going to make, the project that we're going to be working on, looks like this. This is the end product, so whenever we go to the page, I want a welcome message to generate. However, I want that welcome message to say my name, and I also want it to say welcome to our website or the individual name of your website, and I'm going to show you how to do that as well. Then once we click OK, I want it to generate the cost of the particular painting that we have, the quantity of the paintings, and also the value. And the value is going to be the cost times the quantity. And then down here we have a little marker that says whether or not we're in stock for this particular painting or out of stock for this particular painting. And I want it to be based on the quantity. So if the quantity is 0, then of course it's going to say out of stock. If the quantity is more than 0, then it should say in stock. Okay? No, that sounds like a lot, but we have the capability to do this all with variables, and I'm going to show you how to do that today. So let's go on ahead and get started. First thing that we're going to have to do is generate a brand new JavaScript file. We're going to take this thing from the top. So we're going to go over the file. I'm going to click new, and I'm going to save it as a brand new JavaScript file. As a matter of fact, I'm going to save it as JavaScript practice. All right. So the two screens that you should have up are your JavaScript practice file, and then the other one should be your HTML file. And if they're both on the left side, you can just drag it down to the right side. Boom. So the first thing that we want to do is remember, whenever we go to the website, we want it to say our name. We want it to say the name of our store. And we also want it to present us with a welcome message. Well, for it to generate our name, we have to generate a name variable. So all variables are generated in the same format. We type out var. The name of this variable is going to be name. And we say is equal to whatever your name is. Semicolon. And remember, that's how we end our statement. Okay? That's all it says. We created a variable. That variable is attached to our name. It contains our name as a value. Great. The next variable that we have to create is one that has the name of our store. Feel free to name your store whatever it is that you want. However, we create this variable in the exact same format. So we say var. The name of this variable is going to be site name is equal to Sekou Paint Shop. Semicolon. Great, so now we already have two variables, one for our name and one for the name of our site. Last but not least, we now need a variable that contains the welcome message that's going to contain all of this information. And once again, we generate that in the exact same way. However, we're going to create this variable differently than how we've created these two previous variables. So we're going to call this var message. Okay. I'm going to end it with a semicolon. And right now, message does not have any value associated with it. Nothing is attached to it. This message variable is essentially blank. So we come down and we can say message is equal to hello. And this is what the message is going to say whenever we go to the page. It's going to say hello space. We're going to jump out of that quote and we're going to type a plus symbol. And after that plus symbol, I'm going to explain all of this after we type it. After that plus symbol, it's going to have our name variable. Plus another quote, an exclamation point with another space. And it's going to say welcome. No, that's not how you spell welcome. Welcome to, we're going to jump out, another space, another plus symbol, our site name variable, and then we're going to add another plus sign, another quote, and we're going to put an exclamation point to finish it off. And don't forget your semicolon at the end. So that might have seemed like a lot. What does that mean? These plus signs are nothing more than concatenation symbols. They attach two values together, or not even just two values. They attach multiple values together. They are different than addition symbols whenever it comes to math. If these were two numbers, if I had the number 8 plus the number 8, then it would do math. Then in that case, message would be equal to 16. However, that's with numeric data types. Since we're using string data types, then these addition symbols stand for concatenation. All they do is attach multiple values together. So whenever my website generates this particular variable, it should say hello space name, which is Nick, with an exclamation point. Welcome to Sekou Paint Shop. And the reason why it's going to say Sekou Paint Shop is because the site name variable is attached to it. And then it's going to end with an exclamation point. Now, last but not least, we need to call this variable so it generates whenever we load our website, right? And to do that, we're going to use the alert method. So we type out alert, open parentheses, and in the parameters, we just pass through our message. Now, you see how much easier that was to pass through those variables rather than having to type out these distinct pieces of text each and every time? It acts as math. Coding is nothing more than algorithms in algebra. That's all it is. Now, whenever I want this message to generate, all I have to do is call my message variable. I'm not stuck with having to type out all of this information again. Okay? So now that we have that, it's time for us to get it to run within our actual HTML file. But how do we do that? How do we link JavaScript files to our HTML documents? Remember, we use a script element. So we're going to come down and we're going to erase these two script elements. Okay? Because we like starting from scratch. I want to teach you all everything. So we're going to open up the tag, script src is equal to JavaScript practice.js. Essentially, it's going to be equal to this file that we just created. All right. So we save it. I go up and I run it. And then I come down and I open it up. And as you can see, it says, "Hello, Nick. Welcome to Seku Paint Shop." Great. It has my variables in there. It pulled in my name variable. It pulled in my site name variable. And it also generated the message in the alert. That is exactly what we wanted. Great. So after that, I click OK. Now, the next thing. How do I generate this cost value for the Mona Lisa painting? And also, how do I generate the quantity value and also the main value? And I also, remember, we also want to generate this out of stock headline if the quantity is equal to 0. Now, if the quantity is greater than 0, then of course this headline should say in stock. Let's figure out how to do that. So we jump back over to brackets, and now we're going to generate a brand new file. File, new, file, save as, so we can go on ahead and save it as our JavaScript file. And we are going to call this, let's see, variable numeric underscore boolean .js. Okay, so it automatically generates it as a JavaScript document. Great. Now remember, we're going to have to create values for this cost, this quantity, and also this total value. Well, it's going to be nothing more than, once again, generating variables. So to have our cost equal to $8,000, I'm going to need to generate a variable that's called cost. So let's do that. Var cost is equal to 8,000. Now take a look at that. In the last file, I attached a string value, which was our name, to the variable. The cool part about variables is that we can also attach numeric data types to them, and we can also have them do arithmetic. So in this case, we're going to see some multiplication, but if I wanted to do subtraction between two variables, if I wanted to do division between two variables, I could do that. Now it's time for us to create our quantity variable. So I say var quantity equals 5. Next, I generate our total variable, which is going to generate the value. As a matter of fact, let's call this variable value. Var value. Now, what do you think the value variable is going to be equal to? Can't hear what you're saying right now. So if you answered, man, you've got a lot of faith. The value variable is going to be equal to cost times the quantity variable, right? And reason being is because we already have values attached to these variables. So when I go in, I don't want to have to always say 8,000 times 5. What if I were to use this cost and quantity in multiple places throughout my HTML document? I don't want to have to type them out dynamically each and every time. If I can pass them through a variable, then when all I have to do is update the value one time, and it's going to automatically change the value of that variable throughout my entire document. That's the important variables. All you do is declare that variable one time, and then each place where you have that variable throughout your document is going to automatically update. Coolest thing about variables. I love that. So now cost times quantity is equal to 8,000 times 5, and my value should be 40,000. But now, since our quantity is 5, we have to generate that headline down at the bottom that says whether or not that particular painting is in stock or out of stock. Well, how do we do that? I'm going to introduce something new, okay? That's called an if statement. And all an if statement does is present logic. It says, if this is equal to this, then I want you to do this. If this is not equal to this, then I want you to do this. If else, then I want you to do this. Okay? So before we do that, let's generate one more variable. Var message, semicolon. And then we come down and we say if open parentheses quantity is greater than 5 open bracket, and that should automatically generate the closing bracket for you, but if not, then you'll have to type both. If quantity is greater than 5, then I want our message variable to say in stock. If quantity is greater than 0, that is, sorry. So we're gonna have to go into our code block, and we're gonna have to say if the quantity is greater than 0. So this is our logic. If the quantity is greater than 0, then I want the message value to be equal to in stock. Then we're gonna come outside of that bracket, and we're gonna say else, open the brackets again, message is going to say out of stock. Okay, now let's break this down. All we're saying is if the quantity of our paintings is greater than 0, then that message variable is equal to in stock. That means that the painting itself is in stock. It can be bought. If it's not greater than 0, meaning if it's less than or equal to 0, then the message is equal to out of stock. And you can't have a negative quantity. Okay, the lowest point is 0. Okay. Now, the next thing that we're going to have to do is get this to generate within our HTML. Okay. This is going to be a concept that you've never seen before. However, it involves the IDs of our HTML elements. Now, I want you to think back to when you were first learning HTML. You might have learned about classes and you might have learned about IDs. IDs are nothing more than unique identifiers for the individual elements and tags that we have within our HTML document. Okay? Each element can only have one ID. So you can only use one ID one time throughout your HTML document. Whereas classes, you can use those multiple times. But we're not going to talk about classes right now. Okay? These IDs allow us to reference our HTML within our JavaScript. Okay? So I want you to take a look at this ID that's called cost. We have an ID that's called quantity. And we also have an ID that's called value. We're going to use these IDs to pull in the values of our cost, quantity, and value variables that you see over here. Okay? And to do that, once again, all we have to do is generate a brand new variable. So we're going to pass this into a variable. That's it. So we're going to say var EL, which stands for element. So typically whenever I'm using an element that's going to be attached to one of my variables, I typically just start it with EL, meaning it's going to be an element. So var EL cost is going to be equal to our document object. Okay, you remember objects, methods, and events. So document dot get element by ID. That's going to be our method. Okay, so inside of our document object, we also have a get element by ID method, which allows us to reference a particular ID within our HTML document, which is why this is going to be so important. So we open up our parameters, type in our quotes, and the name of the ID that we're referencing is cost. Remember, it's case sensitive, so if I put capital COST, it's not going to recognize that. It has to be the exact same way as we have the ID in our HTML document. Okay? So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to use this variable to update that particular cost value within our HTML. Okay? So to do that, I type out the name of my variable. Now at this point, my variable is equal to nothing more than this method. So lcost dot text content. So now I'm getting the property. Remember, it's always object dot method dot property. So now I'm getting the actual content that's attached to this ID, and we're just going to update it with what we have in our variables, okay, in our cost variable. And we're going to do that for each one of these variables. So we're going to say this is equal to cost colon, we jump out, we concatenate, and we pass through our cost variable. Okay? So variable lcost is element cost is equal to this ID. Okay? Object dot method, and we just pass through our cost ID, which is the parameter. And next, the property that we're updating is the content within this particular element, and we're setting it equal to this value. We're just setting it equal to our cost variable, which is 8,000. Okay? So we're going to have to do the same exact thing for quantity. So we're going to say var L quantity is equal to document dot get element by ID. We're going to pass through our quantity parameter now, our quantity ID. So we open the quotes, quantity. Now we can say L quantity dot text content is equal to quantity colon, we jump out, plus our quantity variable. And one more thing, let's jump back up here, because since our cost is actually money, then we have to make it look like money when it reads out, right? So we're just gonna add the dollar symbol right here. All right. So next we come down and we have to do our value now. We have to pass that through the value ID. Lost my train of thought there. So var L value is equal to document dot get element by ID L value, updating the text content, and it's just gonna say value colon, we jump out, we concatenate it to our value variable. Okay. And last but not least, we have one more ID in here. And that's going to be the one that has the message that says whether or not it's in stock or it's out of stock. And once again, this is done in the exact same manner. So now we have var L message is equal to document dot get element by ID once again. Next we have message L message dot text content is equal to message. Great. So now we have all of that in there. We have all of that generated. And now whenever I run it, it should contain all of this information as we need it. So let's go in and let's check it out and let's see how it looks. Oh, before we do that, remember, we have to make the connection between our HTML document and our new JavaScript document. So I just come down, I write script, the source of that script, and I find my file and I connect to it. And then I close it. All right. So let's generate it. All right, so hello Nick, welcome to Sekou Paint Shop. And as you can see, it works. So it has the cost, it has the quantity, it generated the overall value, probably should have put a $sign in there. And it says whether or not it's in stock or out of stock. That's great. Now, what do you think is gonna happen if I change our quantity to 0? If I change our quantity to 0, then this should change to out of stock and our value should also update to 0. So let's try that out. If we didn't have variables, then we would have to write all of these new variables within our within different places in our document, and that would take way too long, and that would be so confusing. So it's good that we have these variables because we only have to update one thing now, and that's the quantity. And let me put a $sign within our value area also. So I save it, generate it. Okay, it says, hello Nick, welcome to Sekou Paint Shop. And as you can see, the quantity is 0. The value automatically went to 0. And also the headline says it's out of stock. Great, that's perfect. And that's exactly what we wanted. So last but not least, no class would be complete if I didn't give you homework. So your homework is to create a variable that updates the price of a picture. Essentially, I want you to go back through and I want you to try and mimic the same thing that we just did. If you want to alter my HTML and kind of structure your own document with brand new IDs, go for it. The main thing is I want you to grasp onto the concept of variables and how they are used to integrate within our HTML. The variable should have the capability to update the quantity, the price, and also the value. Also, I want you to create a variable that calculates how old you will be in 50 years. Write this variable to your HTML document. All right. So once again, just like in the last video, I'm starving in this video. It's 10:36. I'm an old man. My bedtime was 2 hours ago. So I'm gonna go handle what I need to do, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks. Talk to you guys later. Bye.